You gotta be careful.
Back to the Now Morning Show. It's time for us to shine a spotlight on how you can ensure that your children and the children around you are safe.
When you're tall.
Welcome back inside the Now Morning Show. This morning, we continue our conversations with the Children's Authority. This morning, we're chatting with psychologist Krista Ali, who is representing the Regional Case Management Unit of the Children's Authority. Good morning to you, Krista.
Good morning.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
This morning, we're talking about grooming. What is grooming exactly? How do we define it?
Grooming, or sexual grooming,
Okay.
essentially is a process, and this is something that we need to understand with this. It's not a one-time thing, but it's a process where an adult basically builds a relationship with a child with the intent of eventually getting into a sexual relationship with that child.
So the intention is what matters.
Yes, basically, because it's a process. It's a set of things that person does to basically develop a friendship with that child, build a relationship with them for the sole purpose almost of eventually getting into a sexual relationship with the child.
Okay, tell me about the stages of grooming.
So unlike, other forms of abuse where it's sort of a one-time thing, or it could be sort of a 0 to 100 sort of thing, this is different. And that's why we call it grooming, because it's a process. So it starts off by that perpetrator or, this predator essentially picking a victim and sort of targeting that person, usually because they might have some sort of vulnerability. And, this is why we need to really be paying attention and monitoring our children, because there's so many different vulnerabilities that can make them possible targets to a person like this. The next step is to start building that relationship and gaining the trust of that child. And then moving on to start fulfilling a need in that child. So what that looks like can be quite different for each different case. And that's something to always keep in mind as well. We're talking about stages, we're talking about a process, but it will look different in each case. So this can happen online, or it can happen in person.
Right.
Online, that emotional, the need that they might be fulfilling for that child might be emotional. And telling this child, I'm your friend, I'm here for you. We can talk about certain things, we could talk about this, we could talk about that. In person, what that might look like might be giving gifts to this child or providing physical needs that they might have. Something that they're not acquiring at home or from the people around them. This person might start purchasing things for them, and this is why we always have to look out for gifts that our children or things that our children have that we know we did not buy for them.
Yeah.
So it's about fulfilling a need in that child and then moving on to isolating the child. So online, what that might look like is telling this child, well, I'm the only person that understands you. We have a special bond, and your parents, they don't understand, and nobody understands you, only me. And, in person, what that would look like is physically isolating the child or finding situations where they can be alone with this child for various reasons that might look very simple, or it might not look like something that's a red flag or some sort of trigger.
Right.
Yeah, and then from there, when they begin isolating the child, that's when they start getting the different elements of sexuality and things like that into the relationship. And even that is a process, because that too doesn't usually look like going from 0 to 100. It might be starting to just put little things in the child's mind, show different things to the child, and then move on to various other things that eventually might look like having a sexual relationship with that child. Following which they then use manipulation strategies and tactics to keep that relationship going and to preserve that relationship. That might look like threatening the child in very simple ways, letting them know that if they tell anybody about this relationship, bad things can happen to this person whom they've now developed an emotional bond with. So it's much harder for them to, talk about it.
Let me go back to, because you mentioned all the stages there, right?
A lot.
Let me go back to that stage where You're saying things like giving gifts, for example. Now, these are active things that we as parents can see and say, you know, I saw that you received this. Where did it come from, right?
Yeah.
And we can ask that question, and we can get an answer and deal with that situation. In the case of it being online grooming, where they're just talking to the person online or whatever, they might send, let me say, you know, you send them a Roblox gift card or something like that, where the parents may not be involved in that process. How do you suggest parents deal with situations that they may not be fully aware of? Like they might have heard the name in passing, or they might have think it's one of your little friends, and then without realizing that this is an adult that you may be interacting with.
Various ways, you know, and this is why we really implore people to be so familiar with what your child is doing and who they're talking to. But the thing is, in the same way that I am providing this information to the adults, adults need to also give this information to their children, because kids also need to know what to look out for, and that having this online relationship or having any sort of relationship with an adult, there might be consequences, you know, because sometimes things are not as simple as they seem. Now, we know that online, this person might not be telling the correct age. This child might have actually no idea who it is they're actually speaking to. So it's very important to teach them about the dangers of things that could happen online, and about giving out their personal information, and, you know, trying to meet up with people whom they meet online. Now, again, this is a process.
Yeah.
And there's going to be so many different, you know, areas of it that potentially bad things can happen to your child. The thing is with grooming is that it's quite often, or it's more than likely, somebody that you know as well. Because with grooming, we also find that this person befriends the family, and that's something that happens very, very often with grooming.
So that's where I was going to go next, to
Yeah.
ask you if it is a family friend can be considered
Yes.
a groomer, somebody who is there with the family. They provide, and let's say, a need for the family itself, not for the child in
Yes.
particular, but for the entire family. Is that?
And that's what they do. They make themselves, you know, attached to the family in some sort of way. And it's not often just a family friend. It could even be a relative. One of the cases that I dealt with, it was a relative, somebody that was related to this young boy, who also, so the need that he was fulfilling with this boy is that he was approaching puberty, and he was telling him, well, you know, I can help you out with XYZ. We could talk about this, we could talk about that. And he used the platform of video games to start, because apparently now you can have chats
Yeah, you can chat
on
the
video games and
Yeah,
things
yeah,
like
yeah.
that. And that is the method that he started using, telling this child, you know, I love you and I care about you and things like that. So, you know, it's so many different layers to it, and that person can almost like ingratiate themselves into the family and provide all sorts of physical needs. Dropping your child to school, offering to pick them up, offering to supervise them after school. And again, you know, that's building the relationship, and then that's also isolating themselves with the child and providing opportunities for the continued relationship and building that emotional bond that then leads to something more dire.
Now, Krista, listening to this, I feel like I don't want to trust nobody with my child.
Yeah?
But at the end of the day, like, we have to go to work. At the end of the day, we have responsibilities to take care of it. We can't be there with the child 24/7. How do we
Right.
determine who's a safe person to leave your child with, or to supervise your child, or to have your child around?
Yeah. So, I mean, we need to be vigilant with a little bit of suspicion, just because we have to be a little bit suspicious just because of the fact that most perpetrators are known to children. You know, it's not like in the movies where it's some random person in a hoodie, you know. It doesn't often look like that. Yes, we do have that, but more than likely it's somebody that is known to the child and even known to the adult. So, yes, we need to be mindful of who is around us with just a little bit of suspiciousness in terms of just understanding the reality of what it is we're dealing with. So sometimes, you know, you have a gut feeling about something and you just don't know what it is, or your child might give you some sort of weird little indicator that something might be off. That is a good opportunity to start a conversation with your child. You're very correct that we can't always be with our children, which is why two things must happen. We need to provide our children with information to keep themselves safe And then we need to have that type of relationship with our child where when something does happen or if something begins to happen that causes them discomfort, they feel safe enough to come and talk to us. And that's critical. That relationship, that bond between you and your child is critical, where they need to understand or they need to know that no matter what situation I've gotten myself into, how bad it's become, how far it's gone, I can come to you, or some adult, some trusted adult, I can come to you and let you know what is happening.
Yeah.
And then we as the adults, we then need to listen and do something about it and believe them.
Yeah. I want to flip it a little bit because we've been talking about the safety of the children and making sure that we educate our children, educate ourselves and our children to be able to make them as safe as possible.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the other side. When you bounce up these cases, do you have a chance to speak to or to get any information from the perpetrators to find out like how you get here? Why do you think that this is okay?
So I particularly do not often work with perpetrators, but I can tell you during the course of the 11 years that I've been working in child protection, it's a variety of things. Now out there's so much resources on sexual grooming now because of how rampant and frequent it's become, and some of the cases are really extraordinary. So parents can also use that as a resource and, just Google documentaries and take a look.
Go down that rabbit hole.
I know it's difficult, but the thing is we need to understand, and then you can also share that information with your child. The thing is, right, quite often perpetrators are victims of abuse themselves. They've gone through something that led to their mind being skewed into believing that certain things are okay, like having a relationship with a child might be okay. So there's a variety of things that can happen, but at the end of the day, these things are not okay. It's against the law. Being in a relationship with a child is against the law, and persons need to understand that and accept that. So it's a whole host of various things.
I oftentimes wonder about our culture in terms of, we kind of skew the lines where the beginning of your 20s versus your teens, and we try to get we see relationships happening there and relationships and bonds forming there.
Yeah.
But what is the legal ramifications in terms of age difference?
So anybody over the age of 18, so from the day that you turn 18, you are now considered an adult.
Right.
And then from there, being in a relationship with anybody who is still a minor is against the law.
So there was a window of 16 to 18.
Yeah. So there is a window called the Romeo Clause, where it's considered not all rights, but just it's not against the law for that relationship to happen within that 2 year.
So there's only a 2 year. So if I'm 19 and 17.
No, I'm not 100% sure about that one in terms of being an adult.
The adult
after
aspect
18.
of it. Okay.
Yes.
All right, very interesting stuff. Now, every time Insurance Authority is here, we talk about the communication. You mentioned it again this morning. In terms of communicating about grooming, give me some of the touch points that we need to make sure that we bring up with our children.
That this is very much possible. So in terms of these resources that I'm talking about, when we are informed, we can also properly inform our children. So letting them know that these things is not just, things that we randomly want to scare you about or have you not live your best life, right? These are the very real things that are out there. These are the dangers that are out there, and this is what it can look like. It can look like somebody who is befriending you, and that's the scary part about it. It might seem like somebody that you can trust. Teaching your child to follow that gut instinct as well. And when something happens or one thing happens that makes them feel uncomfortable, don't wait for it to happen a second time. Come and tell you something immediately is very important. Providing for the needs of our children is also very important. And here I'm talking about the emotional needs as well, so that then they then become less susceptible or vulnerable to these predators that are out there. And what that looks like is spending time with your child, speaking nicely to your child, building them up and not always just tearing them down. So just these very simple ways that we can provide for the all-round needs of our children. Because we know we're buying the books and shoes and getting them ready for school right now. But what else are we doing? You know, how are we listening to them? What else are we doing to nurture, you know, everything about them, a holistic development of our children? This is what we need to be doing to prevent these type of things from becoming so common.
Krista, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing this information again. And we look forward to future conversations, because I think we can only continue to educate the nation, as we say, and provide them with the resources so that they can do better. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, Krista Ali, psychologist at the Regional Case Management Unit of the Children's Authority, just sharing some tips with us when it comes to sexual grooming and how you can better take care of your children. And be careful, be vigilant, and stay suspicious. Yeah. You can give them a call at 996 or 800-2014 if you want to report any cases of child abuse or even sexual grooming. We'll take a quick break and we come back with more on the Now Morning Show. Stick around.
You gotta be careful.